right, I just want to give you a brief overview why electronic lab notebooks or ELNs are important, and not just for you to keep your notes in, but there's a lot of other important aspects to keeping notes of your experiments that are important in industry and in medicine as well. So let's get going and talk a little bit about ELNs. All right, one of the big aspects of ELNs keeping really detailed notes is when it comes to patents. And there have been a lot of patent lawsuits about that, of who is the first one, because who can prove that they're the first people having the patents or having made the invention, they will usually monetize the results and can sell the products. So if two scientists, for example, make the same discovery, who gets credit? And that really often comes down that the courts will look at the lab notebooks, whether it's electronic or in paper, to see what date it was, when it was done, and what the results are. There's a very famous case for the CRISPR-Cas patent, and if you look at the movie Codebreaker, you can see it there, how painfully difficult the patent war was for this case. Millions of dollars and Nobel Prizes are important and determined by some of these early inventions. So again, keeping your notes detailed is absolutely important. And when I was in industry, it had to be co-signed, it had to be stamped. So there's lots of rules and regulations on how a lab notebook has to be kept and what should be in it. All right, so in the real world, it is actually your legal witness. And in the lab, it is important for other people to repeat what you have done. So it's like a timestamp diary of your scientific life. So you should really put everything in there, not just what materials you used, what results you got, but other things, what went wrong, or did you read something in another paper, or where are the raw data stored, and all sorts of other questions. Oftentimes you even have to even say like what lot number of each ingredients you used. So it's a really important document. It is used in court all the time. Who was the first one to invent something? And it's also, for example, if you go to a physician, scribing, making notes is also really important, and they document what procedures they've done. So again, it's not just in the lab, not just in academia, but it's also in education, in the real world, and in industry. It's important. So again, it's not just an exercise what you do in the lab and what we tell you as teachers, but you should understand the importance. And for example, I worked in a startup company, I had 2 startup companies, and we went back to the original experiments from the inventors and saw what they did and how they did it, because oftentimes you have to scale up and so on. Companies may build off the work, and they do build off the work, and so for them to understand what you've done, how you did it, and what the results were are really important. Documents like your future depends on it. Yes, write down everything you can think of, including raw data, lot numbers, everything you have done, things that went wrong especially as well. So if something didn't go the right way, write down what you did and why and how it did not come out the way you intended to do it, which happens obviously a lot in science. A personal story, when I started my PhD, I had to take over somebody else's project, and it was extremely difficult and painful because I could not repeat the experiment, and it turned out there was an error in how the person before me documented it, and it took me probably about 6 months to figure out what was wrong and to do it. So happens all the time. Keeping good lab notes is really important, and it seems like a chore when you're in the lab, but it is a really important skill as well. So content, what I just said, really put in everything: references, notes, observations, mistakes, raw data, and so on and so forth. Your tables and figures, data analysis should be explained. What programs did you use for data analysis? How did you correct your data? Were there any outliers? Did you modify the results in any way? So again, it's a really important process, and it has to be learned. It's not something that comes by itself. It is best really to do the entries immediately and not wait a while, because it's very easy to forget the details. Nowadays, you can definitely dictate entries, especially if it's an electronic lab notebook. You can just make notes and then transcribe it into text. oftentimes, if you forget one detail, it may not be replicated. And replication is a really important aspect of science, to make sure that it's not just a one-time off that it works, but it actually can be repeated as well. It's basically like a diary. So keep notes, thoughts, ideas, what you've heard, what went wrong, and so on. Nowadays, again, you can definitely use AI for formatting, and you definitely have to document how you're using AI. Because again, what program did you use? What came out of it? How did you, implement it into what you're doing? Even if it's also experimental design. So documenting what you're doing and being transparent is very important. And as I said, it's easy to fall behind. So do your chores every day, just like a physician has to scribe every day. It has to be done. It's important for the scientific integrity. You also have to credit collaborators, or if somebody else had an idea, write that down too. So again, it's got real world implications, and it's not just for the teaching lab, obviously, as well. All right, as I said before, it is important in pharmaceutical industry, climate research, public health, any field you name it. You have to keep notes of what you do, where you do it, and how you do it. And especially with bench work, it can be very tedious because there's often lots of steps involved. But for example, for procedures, you can print them out or copy them and then just make notes if there's any changes made. So real important, important for your career skills as well. I have seen job ads where they looked for the skill of keeping electronic or lab notebooks and analysis. So don't take it too lightly. It's an important skill to do, and it will be beneficial for your future. Right, again, said clinical connections, doctors have to scribe as well. They have to write down what they said they have to document the conversation with the patient, what medicines they prescribed, and outcomes of procedures as well, obviously. So another historic fact is obviously the documentation by Antoine van Leeuwenhoek. He was the first one to describe small microbes with his microscopes, and you can see that even hundreds of years ago, keeping detailed notes of everything, what they saw, and information description of the processes, what they saw, what they learned, were really important. So it's been since beginning of science that people write down what they see, what they find. So it's really important. And it's, again, call to action. Take your ELN seriously. Think long-term patents. You never know what your research can result in. It may be something really interesting. Somebody else may work on the same thing, and you have to prove that you were the first one. It's a legal situation, it's a legal document as well, and you will thank your future self if you do a good job with your lab notebook. And if you're doing a PhD, for example, it will be much easier to move on, succeed, and graduate. So again, don't take it easy. ELN is important. Lab notebooks are legal documents, and so we teach you the skill on how to do that properly. All right, thanks for listening.